Need answers about how to stay sober, happy, not miserable? Okay, I'm glad you're here. I've been talking about this a little bit. I'm going to go a little bit faster. So I told you all before in the videos before this that the big book is split into two parts. The first 164 pages are the program, and after that are the stories that people can relate to, kind of like going to a meeting. So if you couldn't get to a meeting, you could read the stories in the back. Okay, so this book has been printed 4 different times. So there was the first edition, the second edition, the third edition, and the fourth edition. So when you start at the very beginning of the book, it has a preface, okay? And the preface tells you this is the 4th edition of this book, all right? And it tells you how many copies have been published and a lot of dates and figures. It's very interesting, actually. And it tells you what's changed in each edition. Just a really brief, each edition. So that's what the preface is. The foreword to the first edition talks about the book at that time. So if you were to read the foreword to the first edition, it was printed in 1939. And this is exactly how it appeared in 1939 if you buy the first edition. If you buy the second edition, this was in 1955. Okay, so what, about 20 years later? About 15 years later, they did the second edition. Now, this is the longest foreword because it really talks about what changed in the book. I talked about this before, that they added the traditions at that time. They had learned a lot about that first edition. The third edition, the third foreword is about the third edition of the book and what it's changed. Not very much changed in that one. It's just 1 sheet long. It's very interesting to read. Forward to the 4th edition is this book, the forward to this book. Now, what's interesting about that is that even though they've printed the book 4 times, they have never changed the first half of the book. Okay? The first 164 pages have remained the same. That's very, very important because alcoholics and addicts are idea people, right? I know when I joined AA, I came to the group I came to and I was like, oh, you know what you should do? You should do this, you should do that. Well, if this ever changed, then we wouldn't have the program we have today and people wouldn't have an answer. They did change the stories in the back. Now, when they found out something was wrong or missing, right, they put in an appendix, something in the back to explain it. All right, those were the appendixes in the back. So for instance, when they put out the first edition of the book, Bill W. tells his story. And he talks about having a spiritual experience. And he has this big white light experience, right? Burning bush kind of thing. God came to him suddenly. He fell to his knees, very dramatic kind of thing. And they found that when they put the first edition out, a lot of people thought they couldn't get sober unless they had that kind of spiritual experience. And that's not true. So they put the appendix in the back called Spiritual Experience. That is in the back. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's very important because what it does is it tells people that a spiritual experience can be a sudden, profound, the sky parts and the bush burns and you see God, right? Or it can be a slow educational kind. That is really important to understand. It can be where you come to meetings and you see people change right in front of you and you can't explain it, right? You don't understand how someone can get well like in 30 days, right? And all of a sudden they've cleaned up their life and they've straightened things out and they've got a job and they're talking to their parents. So spiritual experience can be either. So they put that in the back as an appendix to clarify something in the first chapter, but they didn't change that first chapter, Bill's story. They don't change anything in the book. A lot of people think, well, that book needs to be updated. Actually, no, it's very organic and it still applies today. Everything, the family afterwards, to the wives, all of these chapters apply. You just have to understand them. You have to be open-minded enough to hear what he's saying and relate to it. And you can. The characteristics of alcoholics have not changed over almost 90 years when they started the book. So This is a powerful book. It's an organic book. No matter how many times you read it, it changes. I mean, you can see things you didn't see before. So I'm really excited to be explaining this book to you. And that's the first part. So thanks for listening.